Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show you how to rebuild drive shafts on the Traxxas models. This will work for the Stampede that you see in front of us, as well as the Rustler, the Slash, and the Bandit, and all of the four-wheel drive variants as well. This is a question that we get quite a lot. Most people will usually just end up replacing the drive shaft as a whole, but in this video I'm going to show you how to break it all down. Whether this is your first time joining us or you're coming back for another video, I really hope that this benefits you. And if you are returning, I really appreciate you coming back for another video. The tools that we're going to need to do this repair will be a basic cross wrench for your wheel nuts. This little wrench actually came with your Traxxas models. Most people think this is a turnbuckle wrench, but this is actually the assembly and disassembly tool for the drive shafts. So if you see this in your packaging, you're about to learn exactly what we're doing with this tool. We're going to need a flathead screwdriver. This one does have a little damage on it, as you see, but it's okay. We're just using this as a prying tool. You're going to need Allen wrenches. Now you'll need Allen wrenches for the four-wheel drive models and the most current two-wheel drive models. This is an older model, so we're going to be using a Phillips head screwdriver. This Phillips head is actually in my little power driver tool here. You've probably seen me use this in most of my videos. If you're coming back for another one, just as a quick little demonstration, when we push the trigger down, the tool will just vibrate, but as we rotate the tool, we'll get a varying RPM out of the tool head. Now this is nice because this will give you some torque sensing stuff, but you do have to be careful with these because these will round out your screws or damage your threads. In rare cases, we'll need some kind of rubber mallet. I don't think we're going to need it in this case, but just have one handy just in case you do need one. So we're going to start by removing our body and turning the vehicle around. We're going to do this side that the pinion gear and spur gear are on because this is the most difficult one to replace because you do need to get at this little set screw that's down here in the corner. Now we'll start by taking the wheel off. And just like in all of my previous repair videos, store your hardware in a place that's easy to remember where it belongs. And we're going to remove the gear cover here. Now, if you pay attention to the screws that I've just removed here, there are two different size screws. The long one goes in the top hole and the bottom one takes the short screw. And as always, store your screws in a place that's easy to remember. And we're going to remove the screw out of our tie rod that's here. Now with the tie rods that are not adjustable, there is a small washer that's located right on the end of this screw. You can see it here. That little washer goes, oops, dropped it. That little washer goes on the back side of your tie rod. So your screw will go here, your washer will go here. Just as I do with all of my hardware, store them in a place that's easy to remember where it goes. This way you don't lose it. Now, if you notice what's happened with this little drive nut here, this little drive nut's actually come loose for us already, which is kind of convenient because most of the time you need to put this little flathead screwdriver in here and pry it off. Since that's coming loose, we're going to go ahead and take that loose because this little pin, this little guy right here, is really easy to lose. It actually goes in the little holes that are here. So I'm going to go ahead and store that again in a place that's easy to remember it. Now we're just going to push out our axle on this side. And if you remember, or if you just noticed rather, this little washer, this does go on the outside of that axle, but for safekeeping, store it where you remember where it goes. Now to pull this part of the drive shaft out, it's going to be a little hard to get it on the camera, but there is a little set screw that's located right down inside of here. I'm trying really hard to line this up here so you can see it. You see it, it's a little black one way down there at the bottom. Now if you take your Allen wrench and try and line it up as best you can in that slot, First, it's rotated so it's actually there. There we go. So if you can't get it lined up this way, and with the Stampede you can't because this big body post is in the way, and the Rustler, this is a way to do it. You can also come at this angle right here, and in the Stampede this works pretty well because I'm actually in the little set screw there. The other way you can do it is roll the drive shaft around and come in this way. So you have multiple ways that you can attack that set screw when you try to remove it. In this case, we're just going to go here and just give this set screw a loosen. Now this set screw is a pinned set screw, meaning that there are threads on a very short portion, and then there's a smooth shank that comes out of the end of it. We'll get it out of there, maybe. There we go. All right, so when looking at that set screw, you can see what I mean. It's just a small threaded portion, and then it's a smooth shank after that. Now that that's removed, you can pull your drive shaft, and that will come loose like so. Now let's say that you have torn up, before I forget, store your hardware in a place that's easy to remember where it goes. All right, so now your drive shaft is completely out of your model, and you'll notice that this just slides together really easy. If it is 90 degrees out, it will not fit together. I'm pushing with some pretty good force here, and it's not slipping together. So if these aren't sliding together, just rotate until it fits right together. So let's say that we have broken this white component here. In the newer models, this piece is black instead of white. So what we'll do here is we'll take our little tool and we'll kind of wedge this in between, like so. If we kind of pull up and down here, this will slip out that little ball stud. This one's fighting me a little bit. And it will disassemble. So to reassemble these, this is actually pretty simple. Use the same tool that we just used. So we'll slip this down into that hole, and we'll use this tool as a push tool. Now when these fight you, that's where this rubber mallet comes in, because you'll set this on a hard surface and you'll hammer this down just ever so gently. You're just using hammer weight. You're not going to be using a lot of force. You're not going to be wailing on it because you'll break it. And we'll see if I can push this together without the use of that hammer, because we might actually need to use it. Yep, we'll need to use the hammer. So, like I said, just hammer weight. That's all we're doing. We're not wailing on it. Now you can see that that has kind of mostly assembled. And what's going to happen is that at some point this is going to ram into the bottom of that plastic piece and you won't be able to hammer it further. That's when you'll take this tool here and just kind of finish it up. So that clicks it together. So we have uninstalled and reinstalled our drive yoke. This process would work the same for this side as well. We'll just, again, we'll wedge this in wherever that is setting. We'll use this pry tool to kind of pry it out and then just reassemble it. So you can see how beneficial this little tool is here, and it took me many years to figure out what this was. I actually had to contact Traxxas at some point and ask them how to properly assemble and disassemble these, because I was breaking them more than I was repairing them. And one guy finally gave me the tip on this guy. So that's what that's for. Now for reassembly, we're going to take out our little set screw that we put in here for safekeeping. Now if you'll notice, if you look down inside here, let's see if I can get it to focus on it. There are two flat spots down in the bottom of that hub. It's not going to let me focus on it. There are two flat spots down in the bottom of that hub, and those do have to line up on the flat spots of the output shaft in your transmission. So just as we did when we were assembling it, we're going to go ahead and push this in here, and we're going to rotate this until it slips down. This shouldn't take a lot of force to push it in there. There we go. Now we'll line that hole up. Now we're looking for the threads, the threaded portion. So this is the threaded portion of the hole. Over here is not. And then we'll use our Allen wrench to reinstall the set screw. And just thread it in. Make sure that you get these pretty tight, but don't over tighten them because you'll strip the threads out. So we're just going to get it tight. Now we're going to, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install this axle. Now remember, this washer goes on the front, not on the back. And your model might be a little different, but that's okay. Just pay attention to where that little washer belongs. This one went on the front. And then we're going to reinstall our drive shaft. Most of the time it goes together better when you put the axle in first, but this one looks like it's going to fight a little bit. And put that washer back so you don't lose it. And we're going to unthread that screw right there. Remember, that washer goes on the other side, like we mentioned before. And thread that screw back in. Always tighten by hand. Don't let this tool tighten it because that will strip it. And then we're going to reinstall our gear cover. Remember, that short screw goes in the bottom, but since we left the screws lined up where they belonged, it's going to make it a little easier on us. And again, don't tighten with this tool. Make sure that you're just hand tightening these screws so you don't strip them. Reinstall the top screw. And again, don't tighten with the tool. Now, normally I would have put this drive hex back on here because these things are normally supposed to click, but because this is a little bit older model, things are quite worn in on this one. So I'm waiting to do this as a last step. That way I don't keep dropping that pin. Because every time I drop this little pin here, it increases the likelihood that it's going to get lost. So reinstall that pin and then slip our hex back on top. And then we're going to reinstall the tire. Now there are options to replace this drive shaft without completely rebuilding it. Traxxas offers these two components here, the 6852X and 6852A. Now these are heavier duty versions of these drive shafts, and these do work in the older models. So if you wanted to get these instead of just rebuilding your drive shafts. Now at the time of filming this, these are about 11 bucks as far as their going rate goes. And X and A do not mix with each other. So you will need to make sure you're using the components out of these drive shafts. And if you look pretty close, I don't know how well that's coming off on camera, the A is a bit beefier than the X, so just keep that in mind. And when you're comparing these against the original components, there's quite a lot of difference. So this is the original one that you would use for these old models. So you have the option for some upgrades if you wanted to change that. As far as the cost goes, if you look at all of these parts are what's required to rebuild the original drive shaft. And if memory serves me, you're around the $14 or $15 range to get all of these, where these are about 11 bucks a package. So you are more expensive for the upgrades if you wanted to change those and upgrade your component. Well guys, that's going to wrap up this video. And as you can see from the process, this is fairly simple to rebuild and replace drive shafts should you ever need that. And like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, this works for the 4-wheel drives and the 2-wheel drives in both brushed and brushless. So this will get you covered on pretty much every 10 scale Traxxas vehicle that they make. If you have benefited from this video in any way, please consider giving me a thumbs up, a subscription, and don't forget to hit that bell. Like I've mentioned in all of my videos, if you're not hitting that bell, you're not getting the notifications when new videos goes up. So if that's something you would be interested in, make sure you go back and do that for all of your subscriptions. Well guys, thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.